So yeah, just to give us one of, or actually two of these to go through, because I really feel like it's super important. This is the kind of idea that you'll see, I'm pretty sure, definitely in here, but I think also probably on your CPA exam too. So and definitely CMA exam too, exam if you decide to do the CMA one of these days. All this stuff we've covered so far would be on there. A lot more depth. But, it would be a good start. All right, so very typical type problem. They'll give us beginning and ending inventories for each of the three inventory categories. And then they'll tell us a whole bunch of other stuff. And they'll usually ask us cost of goods manufactured and or cost of goods sold. Same thing every time though. Remember our formulas that we want to know by heart. So know this formula by heart. It's important. So it's the same formula 3 different times, right? Beginning raw materials plus purchases of raw materials minus ending raw materials. What you started with, what you added to it. That's the total amount you can use, right? Subtract what you did not use in the raw materials inventory. And that's left, leaves you with what you did use. All right. Similar formula dealing with work in process, beginning work in process. How do you add to your work in process? You use materials, you use labor, you apply overhead. So material, labor, and overhead, add to that. Materials, direct labor, overhead. I want to say, just to emphasize, is overhead applied. That's how we get overhead into the product. We don't throw actual overhead numbers in there. We apply it, right? More on that later, actually, today. All right, gives us, oops, minus ending work in process. All right, so beginning work in process. This is unfinished units, but that would give you all the material, labor, and overhead applied to those unfinished units at the beginning, plus all your additions of material, all your additions of labor, all your additions of overhead during the period. That's all your manufacturing costs of the period. Subtract what's still unfinished, and you're left with what is finished. Cost of goods manufactured, the cost of goods that we manufactured, that we finished. And then our third formula is similar as well, dealing with finished goods inventory, beginning finished goods. Add to that the cost of the goods that you did finish during the period, cost of goods manufactured. That would total up cost of goods available for sale. Subtract what you didn't sell. And you're left with cost of the goods that you did sell, cost of goods sold, the expense on the income statement. So know those by heart. I sat here and put those down without using a cheat sheet or anything. You just kind of need to know that off the top of your head. All right, so once you know that, plug in numbers and solve. It's real easy. It's just adding and subtracting, right? The biggest thing you don't want to do is stick these raw materials purchases in right here. And I've seen it a million times because they're like, okay, they're wanting to know cost of goods manufactured. And they'll put this formula down and they'll be looking for beginning work in process, which they'll find. And then they're looking for materials. And they're like, well, that's the only materials thing I see. And they'll stick that there. Just because you bought it didn't mean you used it. So anytime they give you cost of goods manufactured computing, you're starting at the beginning. So raw materials. So beginning raw materials, $9,000. That's what we started with. We added another $64,000 to that. All right. So the total amount of materials that we have available to use is $73,000, right? Do much in my head, but I can do that. subtract how much we did not use. We did not use 11,100 of it, which means we did use the rest of it. So 9,000 plus 64,000 minus 11,100. We used $61,900 of materials. That went out into the production floor, one way or the other. They said, we'll just assume it's all direct. So that number we're going to use right there as we calculate cost of goods manufactured. So let's do that. Beginning work in process, 5,000. We added 61,900 of materials. We had to calculate that. Labor, 50,000. There's no inventory of labor, right? So whatever you use is what you used. And then they give you all this actual overhead number, which doesn't matter because that's not what ends up being applied to work in process. We apply overhead to work in process using a predetermined overhead rate. And that we'll talk about here in a minute, actually. But applied overhead is 18,900. So all of those four numbers added together, that's your total manufacturing costs. Everything that hit the floor. Subtract what's still on the floor. Any work in process, 8,000. And we're left with the cost of everything that left the floor and went into the finished goods inventory. So 5,000 plus 61,900 plus 50,000 plus 18,900 minus 8,000 that's still there. Cost of goods manufactured is 127,800. We need that if they ask us to compute cost of goods sold, because that's part of that formula, right? Well, we've answered the first question now. Cost of goods manufactured is 127,800. Now they're asking us cost of goods sold, beginning finished goods, 8,000. We added another 127,800 to finished goods. Total cost of goods available for sale, if you added those up. Subtract what you didn't sell. And you're left with the cost of the things you did sell. 8,000 plus 127,800 minus 6,000. 129,800. All right, so real easy, real important. Questions? No questions. That's a problem to work out. Here's what a multiple choice question might look like. Same old deal. What is cost of goods manufactured? So I immediately think, all right, I'm going to need two of my formulas to answer this. So let's start writing it down. Beginning raw materials plus purchases minus ending raw materials is going to give me my raw materials used. And then beginning work in process plus materials plus labor plus overhead minus ending work in process. And give me cost of goods manufactured. And I go looking for those things. So beginning raw materials, 100,000. Raw materials purchased, 320. So I got $420,000 of materials I can do something with or not do something with. I've still got 160,000 that I haven't done anything with yet. So evidently I used the rest. So $260,000 of raw materials used. And that is going to be used in this formula. All right, so now the rest. Beginning work in process is 360. Raw materials, we just figured out, is 260. Labor, 300. Overhead, 200. All that's cost of goods that we had on the floor, and all the cost that we've spent. Subtract what's still there unfinished, 300. And we're left with the cost of the goods that we did finish. 360 plus 260 plus 300 plus 200 minus 300 is 820, which is C. So I thought it was worth running through a couple of those. It's easy stuff, things you like to see. Questions on any of this? One.